Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast. I'm Gemma Creagh and I'm chatting with documentary director Keith Walsh as his film When All Is Ruined Once Again has just been released on video on demand. Keith is a documentary filmmaker and editor. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us.
You're more than welcome. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Are you based in Ireland?
I am, yes. I'm based in Gort, just south of Gort in County Galway.
Oh, so your recce's were very close.
Yeah. I'm living in the place where the film is set. So, yeah, the film. A lot of my neighbours, a lot of the places where around where I live are kind of the main feature of the documentary.
And if you could describe When All Is Ruined Once Again for me a little bit about how the narrative is structured, I suppose.
What the film is about has been, I know it's kind of like a cardinal sin, but from the very start, it's been a very, I almost kind of hated when people asked what the film was about because I didn't really know what it was about. I kind of knew inside, or I knew some part of me knew or trusted what it was about, but it was very difficult to put into words. I actually still find it quite difficult to put into words. But I mean, essentially, the film is set around a time period, really, and in that time period, two roads are built. The first road was opened in November 2010, the second in September 2017. It's set around that time period when these two roads are being built, and obviously a lot happened in Ireland around that time, but also then a lot happened over 7 years. The documentary is not about the road itself. It's very like one of the things I struggled with was that in describing it, it sounds like it's about whether a bypass is good or bad economically for a small town in Ireland, but it isn't that. The road is just I suppose it's a time marker in the film. It's a time, I suppose, the last 20 years have been a time when Ireland got its motorways, so it's kind of using that to look at the life that's in and around this area, around South Galway and County Clare.
And that's something you do very well. You go into all the different worlds. You go into rural Ireland, the way people interact, and the mechanics of farming. Nature plays a big part of it. All these old, familiar Irish characters that we've all met a few times in a few different incarnations, and it all feels so true. But it is like a kind of love letter to the area, but it isn't afraid to kind of just show as well. Like there's a lot of quirkiness to the characters that we meet, to the aesthetics around along the way, and I think nature as well plays a really big part in it. And what works really well is timing wise. There's a few elements of where are we going? There's going to it's in the context of climate change, but it all feels so again true at this point in time, kind of scarily so, considering when it's been released. Could you tell me a little bit about those themes?
Over the 7 years, a lot of things happened in the country, but also happened. 7 years is a lot of life, and a lot of life happens in those years, and a lot of the film is quite personal to me because it's in where I lived in those 7 years. The two places where I lived in those 7 years feature in it, and the people who are my neighbours. But also then in that 7 years, Jill, it's basically the team to make the film was myself, and I shot it and edited the film, and also then Jill, my wife, Jill Beardsworth, she produced the film. So it was really a two-person team. There was also then Jack Lunt, who was our archive researcher, and Killian Fitzgerald mixed it. And it was a very, in terms of the actual crew, it was quite limited. So it was very much about what was happening in our lives. We had two children at the time. In that 7 years, we had Jill's father passed away at the very start of the film. So there was a lot of ideas around mortality, about memory, about what legacy we leave behind, or do we leave anything behind, or will we be remembered, and things around those sort of, some of them might have been to do with sleep deprivation as well, because having two kids is, you don't get much sleep with it. But and then 8 days after the first road opened up, the Troika bailout happened. So it was quite a dark, bleak period to be in rural Ireland. So, and then there's a lot. The whole film is basically about looking at about kind of absorbing, as it goes along, it absorbs the things that are happening around me, but also within me. And what comes out is the finished film. I mean, I suppose one of the bigger things that brought up the theme of nature and climate change and nature's beauty and also power to kind of push back against us was one of the things that brought that to the fore was the flooding in the winter of 1516, when the castle, Torballylee, where Yeats lived, was flooded, and also all the area around Gort was flooded, as well as much of the country. So that the name of the film comes from the poem that Yeats wrote about his restoration of that tower. So there's a lot of themes about memory, about ruin, about Yeats was talking about civilizations coming and going, and I thought it was very fitting, or very it spoke to me, I suppose, the words of his poetry talking about the cyclical nature of civilizations, that they come and go. So there's a lot of things were kind of feeding into it. I mean, and even like simple things, I suppose, down to we moved into a new house. So we lived, at the start of it, we lived in Crusheen, overlooking the lake that's in the film, where Eddie Lenihan, the storyteller, is telling a story.
Oh, he's a brilliant character.
Eddie's brilliant. Eddie, so Eddie's just like lived up the road in Crusheen, in the village, and I played soccer with his son, actually. We then had to move to another area, just a bit north of Crusheen, up towards South Galway, South Galway near Gort, to a place called Killeen, which is named after the children's graveyard that features in the film. And when we moved here, there was weeds here called horsetails. I'd never seen horsetails before, so one of the people who helped us move, I asked him about how can I get rid of them? And he said, look, you're either going to have to learn to love them, or learn to love them, because you're not going to get rid of them. And I did a bit of research about horsetail, and it turns out that they actually have been around for 60 million years, I think, and like at one point during one of just before one of the mass extinctions that we've experienced, that the whole of a lot of the world was full of big forests of these horsetails, or certainly kind of an early cousin of the horsetail, let's say. And most of our oil and gas comes from fossilized horsetail. So, I suppose, you kind of look for inspiration wherever you can find it. And a lot of the inspiration that I found for the film was around things that were literally just happening in front of me or around me,
There's this gorgeous kind of interwoven element of nature and the kind of traditional local characters, their lives, and a little bit about the decay of rural society in there as well, and about how loads and loads of small towns are kind of getting, young people are going to big cities instead, and you do get that element where like maybe things are changing or dying in some ways, which is sad as well, but it also seems like a celebration of everything.
It seems there's a couple of different films in there. There's a lot of different ideas and themes woven through it, and I think it's whenever I watch it anyway, I kind of get something a little bit different, or I focus on one kind of issue a bit more than others. But I mean, like, I suppose that time period where it when it was filmed was very bleak. 2012, 2011, 2012 there was a lot of immigration, a lot of people were leaving. But I think, I don't really, the film isn't really a kind of it doesn't really get into a debate over whether rural Ireland is dying or not, or whether the road is good for rural Ireland or not. But the simple fact of the matter, just in that time, there was no young people. The young people were leaving in droves. And there's a radio piece in the film which talks about Gort being during the Celtic Tiger, it was one of the towns that did the best, and then during the bust, it was one of the towns that did the worst in terms of employment and in terms of immigration. That's just what was happening, I suppose, and I think Gort is, up until the situation we find ourselves in now, and with the lockdown, and we don't know where we're going to be
after that. But it was starting to come back and starting to do well. But it was probably doing well because of its proximity to Galway, and that a lot of people can't afford to live in Galway anymore, can't live in the cities. I think it's kind of a common enough thing across the world now, where people are moving out from the cities because they can't afford the property in the cities. So Gort, because it's kind of close to Galway, was doing relatively well. You know, you had a lot of artists moving back out. You have a lot of artists who have moved out of Galway because they can't afford to live, and then, you know, other people were following. So, but the film, it's I didn't want to get into a debate about the economics of small town Ireland. I was trying to, I suppose, look at more universal themes with it in the context of Gort. I suppose maybe just as I think about it now, maybe it was, you know, often we can go far away to make films about bigger places or places with more dramatic issues, or you know, but sometimes it was just an absolute pleasure to look around the area that we live and to see the world in the area, to see the world and universal themes in the area that we lived in, Gort and Crusheen.
As a microcosm, because it's very charming. Even the scene of, I really loved the Rose of Gort.
Yeah, the Rose of Gort. It's like I you know, I suppose, you know, there, you know, people could look at it as a love letter to an old Ireland, but the reality is that that's the Ireland of that time. You know, these are things that have been going on for a long time, but they're still there and they're still going on. I didn't kind of search out little remnants of old Ireland. They just seem to be kind of, that's a lot of what's there, you know. That's the kind of the rituals that we use for congregation, I suppose, you know. I mean, the Rose of Gort, as it happens, hasn't been on for the last couple of years, so it is a thing of the past now, I suppose.
Oh, that's sad, because I was thinking that it was a nice kind of link down to a modern generation enjoying these kind of older traditions in a very kind of innocent but sweet way. We'll just go back to a little bit about the film's origin. So yourself and Jill, when you guys were devising this and chatting about this and planning this in the early stages, what was the initial scope? Did you guys have a pitch and bring it to the film board? Did you guys have a scheme and put something together first? What was the kind of planning first?
The planning of it was, Vash Wednesday 2008, when we actually did the first little bit of filming, kind of I mean, a lot of our work, what we do is, because I'm a camera person as well, and, you know, Jill does the sound, we can work without having to get a crew. We can work with you know, we can get projects off the ground with no money, I suppose. So we went out and we filmed a couple of characters. We filmed in a kind of a style that we wanted to film in, and we cut together, I think it was like an 18-minute piece of these three characters, one of which subsequently ended up in the film. But I suppose we put together more of a kind of a style piece, and we went to the film board, and we hadn't yet finished our last film, Apples of the Golan, but it was quite near and finishing. So we filmed, we cut together an 18-20-minute piece with these three characters. More of a mood piece, more of a, it was you know, loosely cut. It was just all of an afternoon's filming, I think, or one day's filming. And we went to Simon Perry, who was the chief executive of the Irish Film Board, as it was called at the time. And he really liked it. I think he had spent some time, if I'm not mistaken, in Longford or somewhere. It was either Monaghan or Leitrim, I think, in a rural area in Ireland, and he felt he knew these characters, he knew these people, so he was kind of supportive. And Alan Maher was there at the time, and both of them supported us early on. So it was more like a general idea, but the fact that we were able to put together something that you could actually physically see our approach, it made things a lot easier to. I'm not sure we would have got the support if we were just relying on a written document, because I suppose what we had was more an idea of an aspiration that we wanted to explore. And I mean, it was very, I think it was very brave of them. And I suppose it's something that we're very thankful for. And I think it's something that, I mean, it's very hard to give money to something that isn't laid out and planned out and maybe scripted out. I understand the demands around that, particularly giving government money, but I think it's important that filmmakers are backed and artists are backed where they don't necessarily have, like, the film that we ended up with, the film that we're releasing today, isn't the film that we had planned back then. It has the seeds of it where, you could see the seeds of it in that 18-minute cut or 20-minute cut that we showed, but it isn't anything like what we put on the paper. And I think it's we're very thankful that they went with us, because it was a long process, and we were initially supposed to only go with the first road. So the documentary was supposed to finish with the first road opening up, but then with the Troika bailout happening 8 days later, and a couple of other things happening, like Jill's father passed away, and around that time, and also the road, because of the recession, the road company, they built the road about a year faster than what we had, what they had planned, because they wanted to try to get the road finished so they get another contract, because they could see the bottom falling out of the economy. So that kind of ruined their schedule. So things then, what was supposed to be maybe a year or 2 year production, turned into a 7-year production, 8-year production. And thankfully they were very supportive of it. Can't have been easy for them to hold on to their patience, but we're very thankful. And some projects will suit that, where you don't know where the end goal is, but if the filmmaker is a trusted filmmaker, well, hopefully we don't need to plan everything out to such a place where it kind of stalls the creativity.
Probably didn't hurt that you guys were coming off the back of Apples of Golan.
Yeah.
Set in a Syrian village under Israeli occupation. So that has very different political themes, but also the human stories.
I think making Apples of Golan, I suppose, was probably one of the reasons why we ended up making When All Is Room once again, because we kind of, it was that was going out into a place that was, far away and very politically charged. And I suppose we tried to make a movie that wasn't necessarily dictated to by the politics, but the politics there are the politics are in the apples. They're in the apples, and they're in everything else. They're in nearly everything that the people do in the village that we focus on, was Maj al-Shams, which is a Syrian village that's occupied in Israeli occupied Golan Heights. Yeah, it kind of made sense to kind of look closer to home after being kind of going so far abroad. It was something to what's the what's the quote? The Blake quote is, what is it? It's to see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower. That type of kind of idea, to see something. We just moved to the countryside. I'm from Waterford originally, and Jill is from Sligo, and we'd moved to an area. So it's in Ireland. We're Irish, but it still was a place that we didn't know. We weren't local to the area. So it had similarities to the Golan Heights. And when we were in the Golan Heights, we spent a year in the Golan Heights over a 5-year period. It was a long time there. We lived pretty much with one family that were there. We were part of that family. So, and the whole process of making the film kind of mirrored the process of us getting, becoming, I wouldn't say necessarily becoming part of the community, but becoming more part of the community, or becoming accepted by the community more so than becoming part of it. And it was only when we were accepted by that community in the Golan Heights that we were able to make the film that we wanted to make, because it was, as I said, we work in a 2-person crew all the time, and it's part of our process to film lots, so that we are not, there's not a lot of overheads on us, because it's only the 2 of us, and we can have days where we don't film, we can have days where we film loads and it's no good, because the idea is to try to get to a place where the camera is not noticed, or something happens that, we all know it when we see it, but it's trying to get to it is the challenge. Something where you're present, the people are present, and the camera is not there,
That was actually one of the things that I really wanted to find out, and it was good for me to know, because in When All Is Room Once Again, there's also this rapport, this comfort, this that I don't think Irish people necessarily, it's not something that's ingrained into us, as to, especially older generations, is to completely be relaxed in front of a camera. But there's scenes in there where there's an older pair of women laughing and joking as if it's old friends having a chat. And I always am very interested to how documentary makers can achieve that, because again, it's not a natural state of being. Even someone who works in film, if a camera's on, you kind of tense up. So that makes a lot of sense, that you're around all the time, and you're kind of part of the scenery as well.
Yeah, like I suppose again, like they're these, there's that Sella and Angela. They're two pretty incredible women, but like we lived in the film, we lived in the area of the film, like the hurling team that's in the film. When I was 31, I think, joined the junior B hurling team of Crusheen, and I'd never played hurling before in my life. Jill joined the ladies football team, and she'd never played football in her life. The bonfire that's in it was the bonfire of the St. John's Eve bonfire, just down the road from where we lived. The musician that's at the start, he was our like next door neighbour. Tom and Maureen, who are at the Killeen in the children's graveyard, they're just down the road from us here now, where we live now, just south of Gort. So I suppose, we lived there, we had children there. It kind of, it was a process. I mean, we didn't deliberately join the hurling team and the ladies football team to consciously become part of the community. It just kind of happened. It just felt kind of natural to us to do it. People asked us, and we kind of said, yeah, we'll give it a whirl. But it kind of all contributed to a comfort with the camera. It kind of helps as well. I mean, there was a lot of times I was there on my own, and other times it was just the two of us. So that the fact that it isn't a big film crew, it's just Keith or Jill or Keith and Jill coming down to film. It's there's a lack of preparation for it, because it isn't like some crew coming from the city, to do it. We're just kind of coming down from the road, and they'd seen us at wherever in the pub the weekend before. Or Matty, one of the men, he's not with us anymore, unfortunately. Matty O'Brien, he is the man on the left by the fireplace. He used to, whenever, he used to go to the pub after mass and buy chocolate, and he'd always like give chocolate to me to give to the kids. And I was like, Matty, I don't have any kids. He said, bring it back to your wife. So like, you kind of, it became comfortable because we weren't seen as the kind of camera crew. I suppose the other thing, I suppose, is my background is in camera work. My brother is quite a bit older than me. He's 14 years older than me, and there was just the two of us. And when I was 13, he was doing wedding videos, and he would I think my mother asked him to take me out, just to give me something to do. So at 13, I was doing second camera at weddings, where he would just basically leave me at the church with a camera and get me to film the guest and the groom and all that before the wedding ceremony. So it was kind of 4 years with a camera when I was quite young, trying to film people who were telling me to go away, because I was just a little kid with a camera. But I had to try to come up with ways to make them feel comfortable. So I can't, like, I'm not going to say that I have it cracked or anything like that, but it's kind of something that I suppose, it's something that I did at a very early age. It's something like, if you ride a bicycle, really for a long time at an early age, you just come second nature. I ride a horse. I just had a camera when I was 13, and in groups of people, so it's kind of probably, it's there's an ease to it,
That's brilliant. It comes across, and it is part of the magic that this captures. And I also wanted to chat a little bit about the aesthetic of it. Can you tell me a little bit about creating that atmosphere? You have little kind of almost like little kind of episodic moments, and like you will be watching, say, something very quiet, very nature, a little bit of exposition about the background, and then you'll have a brass band playing in nature, like, and it's very in some ways it's kind of, it's jarring, it adds energy, but it's very interesting to watch, and it kind of keeps you going the whole time.
You know, both myself and Jill are editors. That's how we make our living, I suppose. And you know, there was, again, like, we were editing that film as we went along. You know, I mean, I was editing it and Jill was kind of like looking at it and looking at cuts and giving me advice, and seeing how stylistically things were fitting in, because obviously over 7 years it trying to keep coherency in the style was something that, you know, as various different influences or thoughts, like, so at one point I thought we'll do it all handheld, and then after that, then no, we'll do it all on the tripod, and it, you know, just trying to keep a consistency was a challenge. But I suppose we just had a long time in the edit suite. I would probably calculate it would have taken 6 to 8 months, maybe, probably, to edit it all in all. Like, because of the fact that there's no, you know, time is the narrative within the film, but even that isn't kind of explicit about it. So I suppose the scenes kind of crashing against each other, or scenes kind of shifting, I suppose, was to, you know, maybe it was balancing the meaning within them. Like, if you stay too long on a scene, and it becomes too much pressure for meaning on the scene. So a lot of it was about feeling it. You know, it was about feeling when, you know, you wanted something else from a scene, or when you wanted more exposition or more information, then it was time to kind of shift it, and maybe then talk to the scene beforehand with the next scene, you know, or shift it all together. A lot of it was about feeling it. You know, it's a very difficult thing to, I think myself and Jill kind of suffer a lot, because we're not able to, because we work together and we're living together, and we just kind of talked about things all the time, or at strange times. So it kind of is part of our living. So then actually we don't really, when it comes to talking like this, to being able to kind of pick it apart, it can be a bit difficult, because it just kind of happens in the moments where we're living, you know. It's
an organic, creative
experience.
just like most pieces of art, really. It's, you know, you can academically break it down piece by piece, section by section, and go, these are the influences, or you can say, like, you know, this is your interpretation, and your gut told you to make those creative choices because you knew instinctively it was right, which is it's almost like it's magic in some ways.
Yeah, there's very little conscious, would I was having right in saying that, but it kind of feels like there was not, you know, kind of looking back, there was not a lot of consciousness in it. It was reacting to things that I was interested in at the time, or preoccupations that I had, or things that happened in my life, or so yeah, you know, you just kind of react to all these things that kind of come up, you know,
because you do get that sense of it. Now, one of the things as well I wanted to touch on was the reception. So it's been getting very, very good reviews on its kind of video on demand, but it's such an atmospheric and, again, immersive film. Was it hard to watch it go straight there and not do the IFI? Because you guys were scheduled to do an IFI release first, wasn't it?
We were scheduled to do a cinema release, and yeah, that obviously that went by the wayside. And I mean, it is disappointing. Yeah, it is, of course, disappointing. But I suppose, you know, when you know, disappointment, I suppose, only comes when there's a choice, really. You know, I think, you know, when the choice is taken away from you by something as big and as dramatic as this, I think it's kind of it's hard to be disappointed. It's just like the practicality of it is that we are releasing it online now, and we have to. It maybe will reach a lot more people. You know, it's a pity, but we were lucky enough. We got a good run out of it, festival run. It did quite well in Irish festivals. So it screened at the Galway Film Fleadh, Kerry Film Festival, Dingle, Clonus, Docs Ireland, the IFI Doc Fest, and then went to CPH Docs as well, then over in Copenhagen. So and also I think it went to Full Frame in America and Virginia. So it got a good run, and we also showed it here in Gort, in Sullivan's Hotel in Gort. Anyone that's been through Gort knows that Sullivan's kind of a landmark hotel there.
I'd say that was a big event.
Oh, it was amazing. It was
Yeah.
brilliant. There was about 400 people there. It was like so we did it was a fundraiser for the for Gort River Walk and for the Crusheen Community Centre. So there was 400 people there. We did a questions and answers. It was like some sort of this is your life almost, because like anyone that was been in her life over the previous 10 years in and around this area was there, and it was gas. It was brilliant. It was absolutely amazing. And then you also had like there was people there whose relatives had passed away in the time of the film and were in the film. I mentioned Matthew O'Brien and Kevin was sitting next to him. Both of them, Kevin O'Brien, both of them had passed on. So there was a lot of people there who were coming to see their relatives, and that was amazing. It was quite poignant. Yeah, it was quite poignant. Angela, one of the women at the fireplace as well. I think Angela. I'm maybe I won't say her age, but she had a very, very prominent birthday there recently enough. But she's been to see the film I think 4 times in various different places, three or 4 times. But it was great. It was great. It was 400 people there in Gort, and so we're kind of. We can't be sad about it. We had a very good run of it, and a lot of the people, the right people saw it. The people who were in it saw it and gave their time and energy, because like we couldn't have done it without. I mean, like any film, I suppose you're reliant on lots of people to help you and contribute. This particular film was a small crew, and it was a very small budget as well, really. So we didn't have lots of money, but we were just thankfully like. There was James Mack in Crusheen. He pushed the boat with his son. He pushed the boat that we were on when we were filming the scene of the band at the lake, and he just gave up his time, brought up the boat, and ended up jumping into the lake and pushing us in. And the local parish group, they gave us all the chairs for the band that were there, and there was no shortage of people giving us a dig out. So it was lovely then when we had the screening and to give the money back and give the time and give the focus back to the community.
And it's nice to have a local community like that really celebrated and really seen internationally, because I kind of think there's so many places that are just overlooked because they're next to Galway and everyone goes to Galway, and maybe people might go to Connemara and and they'll go out to the islands or whatever, but like that as well, there's these beautiful communities and spaces and they'll have their quirks, they'll have their rituals, and like that they're just too often they're overlooked. And then like that maybe young people move away and then they're slightly forgotten, and bit by bit they change. And like this is something that's forever for them.
Yeah, that's a nice thought. And like I suppose the whole, I don't mind, it's not, you don't mean to kind of have too much of a grandiose notions or whatever, but so a lot of the film is about memory and about the fading of memory, and about a lot of things that interest me in the making of the film were things that the landscape hinted to of a past that was still kind of present, whether that be like the place names, or whether that be the Famine Road up on the mountains, or the Killeen. And the fact that those things were fading visually, from the landscape, that kind of interests me. And then I suppose as well, that kind of idea that we will all eventually, our memories eventually will fade away. But in the same, that's what Yeats is speaking about when in those final 2 lines, when he says, "When it made these characters to remain when all is ruined once again." And maybe like the memories of having people in the area in the film just helps to write their names a little bit deeper, maybe into memory. It's a hope, I suppose, more so than an intention. It's not my intention to do that, or it's not in my gift to do that. If that's a consequence, if their memory is etched a little bit deeper as a consequence of the film, then I'm delighted with that.
Yeah, but it's beautiful, and it is, like I said, that as well. It kind of captures so many different elements, so many different kind of fun visual elements, so many sad histories, and it even though it is only in that time frame, it does capture other people remembering things about what they have heard, and you know, their kind of spoken word history about it, as much as it kind of captures those moments, which is lovely as well, because I just think that's something, you know, time passes so quickly, and things like that we've forgotten, and we don't know what we don't know anymore. Well, it's a good time to be releasing a lovely piece of art on video on demand as well. But well, look, thank you so much for chatting with us. We were delighted to have you on.
Brilliant, excellent. Thanks, Gemma.
So if you want to make sure to catch When All Is Ruined once again, Access Cinema actually are running a virtual cinema experience, so audiences can watch online through participating art centres. So just make sure to check out accesscinema.ie. So there's a list of venues that will be sharing it. So the Galway Film Society, the Mermaid Arts Centre in Bray, Riverbank Arts Centre in Newbridge, Drogheda Arts Centre in Drogheda, Dunamaze Arts Centre in Portlaoise, and the Sligo Film Society. So they'll all have specialised online screenings of it. So again, all the details are on accesscinema.ie, so make sure to check it out because you'll be able to see it there.